Welcome to the BG Perform podcast, influencing the highest standard of coaching, one episode at a time.
This is the show for coaches, athletes, and high performers who demand more from their training, their clients, and themselves.
Whether you're coaching elite competitors or everyday people, you'll get raw insights that raise the bar so you can influence the highest standard of coaching in your world. DM myself at BGPerform_ and at Coach Jerry Hayes to work together or learn from the best. This show is part of the Coach RX Podcast Network, a collection of shows designed to elevate the coaching conversation. Find the link in the description below. Now sit back and enjoy our new episode. Oh, man. Welcome back to the BG Perform Podcast with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes. Coach Jerry Hayes, how was the week?
The week has been good. Been sleeping so well, continuously. Heavy. Sleeping
Beautiful.
heavy. So I'm ready to get a good leg day after this, actually.
Oh, you're lifting today. That's right.
Yeah, I lifted today. I took yesterday off. Took a nap. Was great.
Beautiful.
I needed it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good. Been going, what?
How's the week going for you?
It's been all right. It's been busy. I've been working on a couple things. I got a couple things launching in the next, hopefully, week. Got a new thing coming out that everyone will see soon, which I'm pretty excited about. Got 2 more episodes. Well, 3 more episodes. This one and 2 more in season 1 of the podcast. So, gonna finish that out. Got our episodes planned. We got this one, obviously, and then 7 and 8. And then I think we're going to be good unless anything changes up. We got a cool idea, which we talked about last time for the last episode of the podcast, which I think is going to be really fun. And yeah, so today we're going to be talking about how we build programs that work. And we're going to dive into a lot of the details that go into, not just how we develop programs, but how programs in general are, like how good programs in general look. All right. And I think one of the major things that I want to really allow for this episode is Jerry to give some input on his programming. And one of the things that I think is really cool about coaching, and if any of you know, I started this thing with another coach that's local to the Albany area, and we've been working on it called the Coach Connect. And this next week on Wednesday is our 3rd meeting in total. And we're going to be diving into basically what it looks like to run the perfect session. And inside of that is obviously like the programming that goes into a workout. And what I've noticed a lot of the times is frameworks are really important inside of programming. And I think that having an overarching idea about what should go where and why it should go there is super important in the long term. And realistically, the selection inside of that is where things change and become individualized. And I think why it's super important is because we for the most part, like, again, fitness doesn't really have wrong answers per se, but we have an idea of what is more efficient than other things, right? And I think you can agree with that, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we look at programming, when we look at fitness, there are a lot of answers to get results. But if we want specific results in a specific time, then like there's things that need to be done. And I think for the most part, if you want to stay healthy, if you want to do this for a really long time, then there is a framework to follow, right? Like there is something that, again, probably 95% of the time works if you follow it consistently. And we're going to kind of go over today what that looks like, what kind of the main factors are. And we'll go over also some of the things that work, but might just not be the most efficient while we're kind of diving back and forth into that. Anything to add to that?
No, it was a great intro, as
Cool.
always.
So I think where I want to kind of start first, right, is when we're talking about building a great program. I think the first aspect of that is individualization, right? And I think, it doesn't, let me rephrase, because individualization is really important, but I understand that a lot of people get really good results from like general programs, for example. And we even have general programs that are great, like Transcend, the fight camp, we have dinner party, we have, a couple different programs that across the board have a lot of different aspects to them that can make you really successful. But if we're talking about building a program from scratch that is going to be the most successful, it's going to be a fully individualized program for somebody. And I think you can agree with that as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely like some people just have more specific needs than others, and you could just make sure that you tailor everything to them. So it's just like if you buy like a suit off the shelf versus getting like proper measurements, it's
Yeah.
just gonna fit you a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example is like, and you can see it too. And I think that's another thing is like you can see a tailored suit versus one you just got off the shelf, right? The sleeves are a little bit long, the pants are a little bit baggy, the shirt sticks out a little too much. And it's those little things that are like, hey, you know, the program works, the suit looks nice, but like it could look nicer, right?
Hmm.
And I think when you look at a program in general, the individualization of a program is what really kind of takes us from like step one to step, say 3 a lot faster, right? There's still aspects in both that are we're gonna kind of match and we're gonna see repeated. But individualization is something that in a great program is going to be, I don't want to, I guess the word would be like consistent, right? Like it's going to consistently put us in a position to be successful. And I think with that, you and I have both had, I think, experiences as coaches and athletes, right? When we were younger, right? We'd follow the bodybuilding.com programs.
Hmm.
Like those obviously were not individualized. They were very much general programs that were just kind of like, hey, do a lot of volume or a lot of reps or a lot of sets and you'll see results. And then you start to kind of go through that phase of like, yeah, general programs are great, they're cheap or free, they save you time, they save you money, whatever. But then you kind of get to that point where you're like, hey, I really want something that's going to like work. I want my arms to be a little bit bigger. I want my squat to be a little bit stronger. I want my back to not hurt. Whatever it might be, insert whatever your goals might be. And I think that's when we start to turn to individualization, and that's when it becomes super important. And I think that like for us, even when we design the general programs, you know, we know general programs aren't going to be the most effective, but there are things that people see, right? Or not see, but they want, you know? And I think that an individualized program is what's, like I said, going to take you to that next level. But I think that general programs can also be great as long as they kind of include some of the things that we've talked about today. But if you really want, or we're going to talk about today, but if you really want to take that next step, individualization is like the main key.
Yeah, general stuff like Brandon said, it works really well. But again, if you're looking for like that extra mile, individual is where you get a little more results, especially because like I think about, well, I don't want to go too far into it because we're going to talk about some of these things, but like
Mm-hmm.
even as far as a warm up for an individual program can look completely different depending on the person compared to a general program. And
Yeah,
maybe you're somebody who has like, for like a push day and your shoulders are all wonky because of injuries in the past. That warm up might change for you and look a little bit different. Where if you were to jump into a general program with a specific warm up that's not tailored directly to you, it might not do enough to kind of prepare your shoulders for that day.
exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that's like one of the main things. But the first aspect I want to get into for building a great program is obviously our kind of like, and we won't dive too much into this because we literally just had a whole episode about it. But principle based programming that uses methods to get specific results, right? And this is something that's really important because you don't want to fall into a program that is strictly method based because it's going to kind of lead you astray, right? It's going to kind of take you down a path that seems very specific, and it probably is very specific, but not to the point that you're going to really get any true results outside of that like specific thing. And it'll work for a little bit, and that's part of the thing that I think is really important to understand is like some method stuff based stuff is going to work in the beginning, right? And that's why it's so hard to kind of, I guess, decipher what kind of program is method based and principle based. But method based programs are stuff that realistically we probably can't do for a really long time. And principle based programs are stuff that you could do for years and years and years without stopping and still continue to get results. And that's a really important thing to understand inside of, you know, programming in general. And I think Jerry and I both have, been on the side of both, where it's like we've had, like for me, for example, right? Like I have some programs that I write that are very method based, where it's like, you're getting ready for a fight, or someone's getting ready for, a half marathon, or some type of event, whether it be a jujitsu competition. Like that is very method based, right? It's like we're getting a specific result to drive a specific adaptation, or the other way around, we're driving a specific adaptation to get a specific result, and there needs to kind of be a method to do that, right? But you're not going to train like that year round, because if you do, you're going to run yourself into the ground, and that's a really important thing to distinguish between a good program that gets, or a method that gets you somewhere, and then a principle that you can withstand for the rest of the year. Anything to add to that?
I just picture myself doing 5x5 every single day and just seeing where it gets me.
I mean, that's not a bad idea. There's this dude in the gym, at the gym I go to. He's got to be in his 70s. I've been going to ABC for probably on and off for 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And now I've obviously been there consistently because I've been training out of there and working out. This dude's been doing the same lifts. He goes in, and today I saw him. I had to walk by him because I put my bag next to him. Dude was doing like Sudoku in the middle of his squat sets. Like he was squatting and then just coming over doing Sudoku. A little bit of a
physical
back.
And mental workout.
Yeah,
I like it.
He's getting those reps in mentally. But dude's been doing the same set of squats, same reps, same bench, same deadlift, just coming in, crushing it, then leaving. That's all he does. He does like maybe one or two things after that.
Same rep, same weight?
Not the same weight. No, he's like progressively been adding over 2 years, which is kind of cool to see. He's just been, it's looking like that 3 to 5 set range, or rep range, with like 3 to 5 sets. Obviously progressive overload, adding some weight on top of that, and then probably crushing the Sudoku or whatever else he's doing in between. So I think it's that type of thing where that is principles, that is sustainability, that is something, obviously, whether you're, an experienced athlete or just someone who's trying to get fit, those are things you can carry with you continuously throughout your life and throughout, following a proper program that are going to help you, right? What might a method program look like? Like I said, it might look like getting ready for a fight where you're doing very specific cardio and very specific cluster sets, or like French contrast, which is something like, French contrast isn't something you're going to want to do year round. Like French contrast is something you're going to want to get a very specific adaptation for a very short amount of time and then get out of it, because it's not like a sustainable training method that, anybody and everybody should be doing, right? Like that's not something you're going to go into the gym on your first day and be like, oh, we're going to introduce you to French contrast, which sadly people do, because you'll see people going into the gym doing heavy trap bar deadlifts and box jumps within like 2 weeks of starting, which is fucking nuts. But yeah, so I think what?
You're just like, which is fucking nuts.
It really is. It's absurd.
Well, you said it was funny. I agree.
But,
Shut up, train.
So I think that's one of the things that really sets apart a specific program from, or a really good program from an okay program. Anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Add something. I
got nothing for that one. I added, you added, we're off.
Next, I think that what really goes into, a great program that actually works is movement selection, right? And I think with movement selection, it's this is where it kind of starts to get a little bit like, I don't want to say I don't think hit or miss is the right way to describe it, but like there's not always the right answer here, if that makes sense, because I think movement
it's not
selection,
so black and white.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of goes back to our first point, which is like the individualization, because even with something that, like, again, me and Jerry are two different body types, right? And there's some things that just aren't going to work for Jerry like they are going to work for me, and vice versa. And I think that that's where movement selection starts to come into play with each person and how important it can become to getting long-term results, right? And that's why the program becomes so great. And that's why, for the most part, a general program is going to be like limiting in a certain way, because if you can't back squat for some reason, if you don't have the information or the knowledge to say, hey, I can't do X, I'll just do Y, then you're not going to get the stimulus, right? Or you're going to do something half-assed, and then, you do that for long enough time, you're not actually going to get any results from it. And I think one of the most important pieces is obviously understanding that with movement selection, that's what builds us the confidence and the quality of movement to get the result, right? And I think like for myself, me and Jerry actually having this conversation the other day, like I've been running a lot and Jerry sometimes his knee bothers him. I haven't really like back squatted in I don't really know how long, but I'm still getting that stimulus from like a sled push or
Mm-hmm.
a leg press or a pendulum squat. And I'm getting that same stimulus without taking like all the load and stability and stress of a full back squat by using other machines and using other things in the gym to still give me that leg strength stimulus, right? And if your knees are bothering you on the squat, again, a leg press, a sled push, a goblet squat, changing the position of your heels, changing depth, squatting to a box. This is where we can start to get really creative and build a real program. But also in a great program, maybe individualized or general, there may be options as well. Like you might see something where it's like, hey, if you can't do X, do Y, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good program. And sometimes in the Transcend program, we do give that option if there's like pull-ups. Like for example, if you can't do pull-ups, we'll recommend to do lat pull downs or inverted rows or something that's just gonna still give you that pulling stimulus if you can't do like the main driver movement that we're choosing for that day. So I think that's the first piece of movement selection. And then obviously movement selection in regards to like layout of the program, right? And that's like the ordering the exercises. It's like, where does the squat go? Where does the RDL go? Where does the accessory work for that go? Where does the mobility work go? Obviously, there's a way to do that it works best, right? Like, I don't think anybody's sitting here arguing saying like, oh, let's do the squat first and then our warm up next. Like, just doesn't make sense, right? So I think that's where we start to get a little bit more specific, and I think we can all kind of like agree in some capacity that there is a certain way we want to do these things. We want to see some type of like body temperature elevation and mobility, or some specific flow first, where we're getting our body moving, getting a sweat, maybe working on some specific pieces of our body to mobilize it and prepare it. Then we're going to dive into some type of CNS activation, some type of primer for that movement, whether it be, for example, what's a good example for like a bench? So maybe we're doing like some type of, and this isn't always the case, but like some type of like throw, right? Or some type of ISO hold, or some type of, even in the opposite direction, some type of like banded row, or something that's just getting the muscles moving and the body a little bit, like getting the central nervous system activated to create force in that next movement. Then we're going to have that main movement. Then we're going to have that accessory work. Then we're going to have that, finishing piece. And that's something we've been working on in the Coach Connect, is kind of like forming that together. And it's understanding that framework exists. And then inside that framework, that's where we start to fill it with the correct movements and the correct, selection of that.
Yeah, the specifically with when you're saying like nobody's going to argue like that you should squat first and then warm up after. Obviously, along with that, this kind of ties into the next point that we're going to talk about too, is the type of reps that you're doing. Like if you have heavy strength work, you're not going to be doing all the accessory shit first. Like you're going to be getting that heavy strength work directly after the warm up.
Although I have seen,
you can go into,
I'm not saying this is correct, but I think we've maybe tried this before. I don't know, but some people doing like, for example, before a squat, doing some type of like hamstring machine and quad extension machine first, just to kind of like warm things up. Or even on the bench, it's like doing some face pulls or rows before the bench.
Yeah, that's definitely different, because those are like movements to prime the joints a little bit. And
so I guess
muscles.
we could still consider that like a more advanced warm up.
It's if anything, it's a more advanced warm up, because even myself, if I have squats, I'm gonna do like lying hamstring curls. Yeah. Just to get my blood flowing to the hamstrings. It warms up, kind of lubricates the knees, makes it so, because for me, obviously, the knee thing's going on. And, obviously, you're going into the squat feeling a little more warm. Your joints aren't going to take as much of an impact and feel like they're not ready for the squat. So, obviously, like, the movement selection and order matters. But on top of that, you're also looking at, like, the rep schemes that you're doing. Like if you are going to go with like heavy squats, you're going to put those front and center of that workout. This way you get as much input as you can into that main movement before you hit the accessories.
Yeah, and again, it's understanding like inside the movement selection that if the squat is going to be the hardest movement, we want to be fresh for it. We don't
Yes.
want to wait till the end to do the hardest movement of the day. Like it just doesn't make sense in regards to, you know, getting the most out of that movement. And that looks different. And what I want you to, or it doesn't look different, but what I want you to understand too is like that might look different in regards to the layout long term, because what we might see is, for example, like I've had this before where, you know, people either on a time crunch or like alls we really do is the squat, for example, right? Like sometimes when people were training for like a powerlifting competition, and obviously the squat was like the main thing that we were doing, you know, maybe the first 20-ish minutes was like warm up, prep work, a little bit of mobility, and then the thing we did for the day was like the squat. So technically it's like at the end of the workout, but in the grand scheme of things, it is right where it's supposed to be, which is like after all the priming, after all the prepping, and then your energy is at the highest, your central nervous system is firing, and you're getting right to it. Reason being, if you think about it, right, if you the central nervous system for most people is very easily excitable, right? Like you don't need to do much to be ready to move weight. Now, some of us, after a long time, after a lot of lifting, maybe it takes a little bit longer to kind of ramp things up or feel good or get that feeling of like, all right, let's go. For the most part, most people it's not going to take that long to get them ready and prepped. If you're going for, you know, 4 or 5 exercises before you're doing your main set, you're just taking unnecessary energy away from the main thing of the day, right? And if we look at it for the layout with movement selection, we're going to want the hardest movement first in regards to like the strength work. Then we're going to have that accessory work or that supporting movement. Then we're going to have less skill, higher output movements. And then we're going to have something that's a little bit more like easy, sustainable work, right? And that's just a really great layout for a program that's going to allow you to get the most out of it and do the things that you need to do to get that adaptation.
Not only will you get the most out of it, you're just going to feel better doing it that way.
Exactly.
It's just the way that things should. Obviously, we're talking about there's no like, it's not as black and white.
Well, there should
that's
be.
One of the
I think there
best
should
ways.
be, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Because obviously, like
even
some
in
people just even for bench press, they'll just do 2 to 3 warm up sets for a bench and then just go into their heavy set. They won't do any priming or anything. Get their body. I mean, I guess their heart rate and temperature is getting elevated with the warm up sets, but like some people, it's just again individualization. Some coaches do things differently, but that's what we've definitely found to be the best for getting results.
Yeah. And I think it's like, you know, I do think in some of this there is, again, specifics that need to happen for it to work. And I think this is one of the things that needs to happen for it to work. There can be, you know, and it's really just, you're not like, you can switch it. And that's another thing I want you to understand. Like you can do the other stuff first. You're probably just not going to max out the squat properly, right? Or you're not going to get the most out of that movement that you could if you're doing it at like the end of a workout. Right. And also same thing. If you're doing it too early in the workout where it's like you're not even warming up, you're not going to get the most out of it either. So those are both really important things to understand there. Anything else to add to that? Just move on.
We can go on to the next one.
Yeah. So I think the next thing, like Jerry kind of brought up, was reps and sets and rest. And I think this really kind of defines what you're doing inside of like the movement selection, right? Like if you're doing a squat, for example, and you're doing, you know, 10 to 15 reps at, you know, a 1 minute rest, you're not going to be able to do that much weight, right? Like,
I got my heart rate going a little bit, even just thinking about it. Sorry.
Exactly. Right.
I felt like I was just warming. That's some CNS activation right there.
It's so simple to get people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like if you're doing a movement at like 10 to 15 reps and you only have a minute rest, you'll get stronger, right? But it's not going to be like max effort strength. And I think that's something we need to understand is like, because you're not, you know, we have to think of movement as like a battery, right? And every time you do a movement, you're taking a little bit away from that battery. Or in regards to like, if you're at 100% and you do say 15 reps of a bench press, you're probably somewhere around 20% of the output that you could actually do from that moment. And as you rest, every, you know, second you rest, that battery starts to recharge a little bit, but it's not going to recharge to 100, right? So every set you do, that top end of that battery is going to get a little bit more drained, a little bit more drained, a little bit more drained. And that's why it's really important with like these bigger lifts to take more rest time, right? And all I'm trying to say here is like the reps and the rest really give us an understanding of like what is the stimulus we're trying to achieve here. Is it hypertrophy? Is it strength? Is it power? Is it speed? Like whatever it might be, that really is the language that tells you what it's going to be. And if you're in, again, if you're in a program and you're seeing the main movement of the day be like, you know, strength, and it's a squat that's like 10 to 15 reps with 1 minute rest, you know, that's probably not going to be a great program, because that's going to be one, a ton of volume, and two, you're not going to really be able to sustain that. And I would be surprised if most people at the end of, say, 4 sets of that would be able to maintain the weight for all the reps that they're being asked to do without either losing form, putting themselves in a bad position, or just downright like failing.
That's one of the things that, not to get too like in depth, but when you have programs, specifically if they're saying strength, that have that many reps as the main movement, that's kind of like, that's a red flag. But if you're looking to get any type of response to your strength or hypertrophy, and the limiting factor is your cardiac output and kind of like your aerobic capacity, you're not really gonna get results in that either. So like if you're constantly out of breath, like if you're not full, like if you're breathing heavy as you go into set number 2, guess what? It's not going to be the main focus is strength, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be going more heart rate driven exercise. So that's where, when I see that people tell me that they do those high reps with short rest and they're trying to train strength, and I'm like, all right, well, how do you feel going into set 2? They're like, oh, I'm never ready for it. It's like, what are you doing?
I've never been ready for it in my life.
Specifically, I'm thinking of one member of a gym that I worked at in Denver who was like, oh, I'm not ready for that, but here we go. And I was like, no, just rest, dude. What are you talking about? So that's, yeah, just like a little bit of extra. Like if your limiting factor is your heart rate and your breathing, you're not going to get stronger in that next set. Like,
yeah, and I think it's the biggest thing is just that. Why wouldn't you take the extra rest to do it properly? Right?
People don't like to slow down, man.
Yeah, and it's like I think people inside the gym, and this is another thing, and this is why seeing a great program versus an okay program, like a great program, you know, it's not always going to just give you a ton of rest. You shouldn't be just standing around 5 minutes in between sets. But it should give you, if you're trying to do heavy work, you should have rest that what's the word I'm looking for? I was gonna say signifies, but I don't know if that was the right word.
I don't know where you're going with the sentence, so I'm not sure.
Like the rest should tell you what you're trying to do.
The rest should.
It should tell you. It should tell you like, all right, you should be trying to do strength work, or it should be telling you I'm trying to do hypertrophy. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I know the word you're looking for, and it was on the tip of my tongue, and now it's completely gone. But I don't know.
If it's not the right word, let us know. But anyways, it should basically show you what you're trying to do, right? If you're taking 3 to 4, or if you're being recommended 3 to 4 minutes in between a set, then you should be feeling like at the end of that, you're pushing yourself to the point where it's like, all right, I need 3 to 4 minutes of rest. If you're only being asked to do a minute, then you're probably not going to be able to push in that way. You'll still be able to push. It's just going to be a little bit of a different stimulus overall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are like, is it time yet? They're like, no, we still have a minute. Like a minute went by, we still have a minute left before we go. They're like, I'm ready now. Be like, we need to go heavier. They're like, okay.
And obviously, like early on, and this is another thing, like early on in a program, you do to a certain extent want to be moving, especially if you're very new into the gym. Like I do want to preface this by saying like what we're talking about is a very, I don't want to say specific, but like once you get to a point that you can fully execute on like absolute strength, then you're going to want to look to take those big rest periods because you're going to need it, right? Mm-hmm. Early on in your lifting career, the rest may be a little bit lower because you're not going to be able to basically create that output through movement, like through specific movements, right? Like your central nervous system isn't going to be strong enough yet or active enough yet to get the full stimulus of a heavy bench press, right? Mm-hmm. But you might be able to knock out 10 or 15 reps at like a lower weight and have less rest and do it again and have less rest and do it again. But if me and Jerry were to kind of do like, for example, a new person might walk into the gym, right? They might do a 1 rep or say a 3 rep max of like 85 pounds on the bench, which would probably translate to like 105 pounds as like a 1 rep max, somewhere around there. So 85% is probably, maybe we can estimate like 80%, right? If their 80% is 85 and their 1 rep max is like 105, right? But like a power lifter, for example, their 1 rep max might be say 415 on a squat, but their 80% might be like, what is that? It's probably like we should just do even numbers. 400, do 80%. That's 80, 80, 80, 360, 30, no, 32, something like that. I don't know. I'm fucking up on the math. 320?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
you were like 32.
yeah, I said 32. I was trying to do the math.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like that's a huge difference. Like that's 80-pound difference from 320 to 400 versus 85 to 105 is 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that difference in weight is obviously going to be, it's going to get bigger as you get more advanced. So your higher percentages are going to be a lot harder, but your lower percentages are going to be a lot heavier as well. Right. So when you're in the gym in the beginning, you could probably rest a minute and then repeat the 85 because it's not your actual full muscular strength. It's more like your CNS not being able to produce that output. And that's a really important thing to notice. So early on in the gym, it's really like you can do like big supersets and keep moving and have a little bit shorter rest period so you can get like a strength stimulus, but you still want to be working on, you know, activating that central nervous system and getting it to fire a little bit more efficiently in those movements. So your body gets used to like those high outputs so you can get that full like max effort strength output or adaptation.
Perfectly said.
Beautiful. I love it.
Beautiful.
And then, yeah, I think sets too. Sets is another thing where it's like, you know, if you're seeing, you know, there's like, we talked about this before, the 5-set range for a lot of movements is going to be pretty normal towards like, you know, depending on the movement. 3 sets is going to be another normal one. If you're really seeing anything above like 5 and the reps are very high, you know, it's probably, I don't want to say it's wrong, but like, you know, because sometimes with
That's
people,
a lot of volume.
yeah,
For one exercise. Yeah.
this is a lot of volume. It really depends on the individual. Like again, someone who's experienced probably isn't going to be able to do 6 sets of 10 reps at their 80%. Like they die.
Do you remember our 8 sets of 8 that we did from, what was it, Muscle Farm posted it back in
Probably. Yeah.
like 2013? We were just
they had
8
that,
sets of 8 front squat. Let's go.
I do remember front squat.
Psychotic, dude.
Yeah. They had the German volume training phase that they went through and they were just posting, everybody was doing German volume training.
Bro, I woke up, my legs were so cramped and I had to pee and I couldn't move. I was like, I fucking hobbled out of bed and I was walking like a pirate to the bathroom.
So funny.
So
funny.
bad.
But yeah, and I think that, you know, the volume and the sets, again, all of these 3 reps, sets, and rest, they should basically correspond with each other to tell you what kind of stimulus you need to achieve in that session. And I think that I think, again, most people understand that, especially coaches. I think the language they use is a little bit messed up from time to time. I think a lot of people call power stuff, that's not power work. I think a lot of people call speed stuff, they'll put a band on something and say it's speed work. It's not, right? Like speed is with intent to move really fast. Power is the intent to be very explosive. Strength is to produce the most amount of force, right? So it's
The
like
intent to move quickly, but you just fucking can't.
yeah. So like again, force-based movement, right? Like producing the most amount of force is not doing, you know, 100 or say 15 reps, right? Like producing the most amount of force is like as much weight as you can for the minimum amount of reps that you could do it for, right? And then hypertrophy looks a little bit different. And then speed is getting the max speed of something, right? So doing a speed movement and then doing 95% of your 1 rep max doesn't make sense because it's not going to move fast, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get strong, but like you're not going to move fast, and the purpose of like getting faster, again, isn't going to really make sense. So that's the biggest thing with that, is just understanding all 3 of those to kind of correspond with each other to make sure you're getting what you need from the program. And in a great program and ones that we build, all of that is basically categorized for you, and basically you can easily tell what you're doing and when you're doing it.
Yeah, the other thing too with sets that I've been seeing a lot of, and I've thrown this into some of my stuff recently, was 2 sets of a higher
Yeah.
number at the very
Yeah.
end for some volume work, and that's always really good too, because like if you're pushing the weight for those, like let's say you have 15 to 20 reps even in like a final set of something, you're really going all in.
Yeah.
That's a lot of volume for 2 sets. Like if you're doing a set of 20, that's 40 reps in just 2 sets. You're not going to need to throw in a third. Like for some reason, there's like this cookie cutter thing that even back in the day, bodybuilding.com used to do, but a lot of new coaches do it too. It's like 3 sets of this, 3 sets of that, 3 sets of this, 3 sets of that, done. And it's always 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like Brandon said, 5 is a pretty normal number. Even 4, like 4 sets, 3. Now even like a lot of people are using 2 at the very end of workouts, but knowing what your goal is as you're going into it is important, because obviously, like Brandon said, you're not going to be doing sets of 15 to 20 with 5 sets to go through, but you're also not going to be doing like what
I was going to say. We had the podcast we did a while back on like sets, reps, rest, all that stuff. So like we can definitely put that up in the I'll put those in the description so people can listen to that, because we dove pretty heavily in depth into all this stuff.
Yeah, dude, I'm forgetting some of the stuff that we've done now.
I mean, I know we're just starting like this, kind of like restarting this season.
Yeah.
But we've been doing this for fucking almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff out. Hey.
Yeah, I gotta stop saying the F word.
Yeah, I'm trying to say it less.
I'm trying, but I can't.
It's built into New York blood. You just start a sentence with it for some reason.
I think it's also like the Italian blood.
Yeah, it's a weird mixture.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, next thing is that you're going to see in like great program is progressions, right? And I think honestly I think the next 3 kind of go together, so I will bunch them together, but it's progressions, repeatability, and sustainability, right? And I think when we kind of look at this in a program, it's all the stuff we just talked about being properly progressed over time, and kind of throwing out this idea of like traditional periodization, where it's like, oh, things have to be done in this order, things have to be progressed in this order, things have to be done at a certain timeline. And I think a lot of people mix that up, and they leave a lot on the table instead of just understanding that like traditional periodization, it gives us a framework for what it could look like if it was perfect, but very rarely is anything perfect, right? And that's why we have to adjust things, and that's why we have to kind of create these new models and do what we have to do to make sure people are progressing properly. But sometimes it's just patience. Sometimes people need more time in certain movements, or in certain rep ranges, or in certain, rest periods before they get that stimulus, and it just takes more time, right? And I think progressing someone in the proper way, and this is why general programs can be very difficult for people. And I think why general programs probably have such a high like churn rate. Like people are coming in, doing the program, but there's no individualization, there's no proper progression, because they might need an extra 3 weeks on a back squat. Maybe they're just not feeling it, right? But the program says it's 3 sets, then it's 4 sets, then it's 5 sets, and they're just going through it, doing what they can, and it's like, ugh, well, I didn't really progress anything, or things didn't get better. And it's like, well, of course not. You're doing like a general progression that fits most people, and you needed more time, or you needed eyes, or you needed a fix, and you didn't have it because it's general program, right? And that's where the individualization comes in. It's like, cool, I need help on the squat, I need to work on this a little bit more, so I need a couple extra weeks to make sure it's good. I need a couple extra weeks to make sure it feels good, and that this weight looks good, and then I can progress to the next weight, and that might take a little bit longer. So that's where the progressions come in, to like, that type of thing. But then there's also like the movement progression specific, like, hey, maybe the back squat's not working, so like, let's try a front squat, right? Or let's try a goblet squat, or let's try a back squat with our heels elevated, or let's try a box squat, something, that same idea, where it's like these progressions or regressions, if you want to call them that, are specific to what's going to get you the stimulus that you need to get inside of that session. And you're just not going to get that inside a general workout or a program. And it's really important, right? And inside of those progressions, that's where the repeatability and sustainability comes in. Because if you're not able to repeat properly a movement, again, why would that make sense that you're able to properly repeat a movement and not get better, right? If you're not able to properly repeat the stimulus or the weight or the movement or the sets, you're probably not going to get better, and you're probably going to get hurt or just, be done with it and just get frustrated. And the sustainability is like, if you can do that properly, you're going to be able to do that for a really long time, and you're going to get really good results. And at the end of the day, I don't know what you're looking for, normal people, but like, I think that's all we're looking for at the end of the day is a great program that we can follow that's going to give us results, make us feel good, get us strong, and just enjoy,
Yeah, with repeatability, one thing I think of is reps, reps, reps. And obviously, like, there's a couple different meanings to the word reps in the way that we're talking about it. Like, obviously, it could be the volume and how many repetitions you do per set. But in this case, I'm just talking about moving through, like, repeating it, just repetitions and learning. Mm-hmm. So when somebody's first starting out, especially something like a squat or a deadlift, any type of hinge, really, like all these things that are very complex movements, but kind of foundational, you might just choose to keep them around longer because you're just perfecting the movement. You're not really challenging the movement itself with heavy weight and getting like max responsiveness and adaptability or adaptations from your muscles or central nervous system, but you might just literally be working on learning the movement in general. Yeah. So that, especially when people are just starting off, you might keep a movement for even longer just so they can learn how to properly hinge or properly hit the depth in a squat because it's always felt weird, or they have this limiting factor with whether it be range of motion or pain or whatever it might be. You might keep it longer just so people can master that movement over time.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. That's all. It's just allowing people to do what they need to do to get better at that thing. And that's what a great program is going to allow you to do. It's going to take all the things we talked about, right? It's going to take, individualization with principles that translate over time, and on occasion using methods that help us either achieve a specific result or get ready for a specific event. Then that movement selection is going to basically take us on the journey of like, what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? And then the rep, sets, and rest is going to basically give us the language or the translation of like, here's what I want you to do, and this is what you should get out of this. And then the progressions are going to allow us to just get better at that skill or progress that skill, right? Getting better at that skill looks like squatting, your first set or your first week is doing 100 pounds. And at the end of the fourth week, you're doing 150 pounds, right? Progressing the skill is like, all right, I started at a goblet squat and now I'm working my way up to a front squat or overhead squat, right? And those are the types of things, like the differences there. And that's where, the progressions come into play. And the repeatability of that is, okay, if I can continuously squat for 6 weeks in a row, I'm going to get better at that, right? And the sustainability of that is if I'm going to squat for years, right, there's definitely going to be progression, but we're also going to improve the skill itself and be able to progress that skill because we have so much time underneath the bar and, basically can utilize the sets and reps and all that stuff better.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Anything to add to that?
Nothing. That was perfect.
Cool. So I guess that's it for today. We're talking about, obviously, like I said, building a program that actually works. And I hope all of this makes sense. I know we didn't really dive into specifics. I know we kind of touched on a couple things and dug a little bit deeper, but obviously this goes a little bit deeper than, there's a lot more that goes into this than just everything we talked about today. If you're a coach and you're interested,
surface level.
Yeah. If you're a coach and you're interested, like, we're always open to having that conversation. If you're a client and you're interested, whether it be hopping on one of our general programs or working with Jerry or myself, online, that's a great way to kind of go about learning as well. I've always like that when I was very early in my career and I wanted to learn like either how a coach programmed or how someone thought, I would either work with them or I would try to find a way to find a program that they wrote or something that they talked about, whatever it might be, because you can really learn a lot by doing someone's workouts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the way that they write workouts. You can learn a lot from that stuff if you pay attention to it. So I think that's it for me. If Jerry doesn't have anything to add,
that's it.
All right. Then I think that's a wrap. Next week, we got episode 7, and we got one more episode after that. I appreciate you guys for tuning in thus far, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.